All right, so I'm here with Josh Wall, and you're from Information Strategies.
That's right,
And
yeah.
what brings you to Microsoft today?
We're actually at the Army Symposium. This is where the Army can come and get a chance to see some of the new technologies, some of the existing technologies, and how they can basically integrate those into what they're doing.
And what does Strategies do? I mean, do you work with Surface quite a bit?
We work with Surface quite a bit. We also do a lot of Microsoft Dynamics CRM and SharePoint, a lot of SQL Server, BI stuff. So we like to basically build solutions that combines one or more of those technologies together in a complete system, as opposed to just saying, okay, this is just a SharePoint app or Surface app. We're really we see the value in putting them together.
And what are we going to take a look at today?
First we're going to start off with an application that we built for this conference. It uses our virtual earth control that we've been working on. So virtual earth doesn't natively support Surface and WPF. So what we've done is we've created a control, a WPF control that we can use in our Surface applications, can also use in WPF apps at the same time. So what it does is it basically adds the Surface gesturing capability to the navigation of the map. And so the way that we've done it using DirectX and some other things enables us to get this really high performant navigation of the map, where it's just very natural, very intuitive,
it's
and users can
fluid.
Users can get to what they're looking for really quickly. Then of course, this is leveraging all the capabilities of virtual earth, so we get the satellite views and some of those other things.
What about 3D view?
Got a 3D view too. So yeah, if you want to say, like, if we zoomed into let's say Washington D.C. here, and we let it just resolve for a second there. So what we've done for a 3D view, this is one of the concepts we're working on. This is kind of a aircraft type of instrument,
like a pitch ladder kind
of thing. It's a pitch ladder, yeah, pitch and heading. And so we've taken that, so you get kind of this overlay on top of the virtual earth control that gives you an idea of what's my current pitch, what's my current heading, and it really gives the users kind of this visual idea of where they're at with it. So we can use that to change the the pitch and the heading, then turn that off, and then we've got basically the full capabilities of going in. We can zoom in and pan around the map in this view, and then switch back to the 3D view as necessary. Just one of the concepts that we're working on. This is really this type of user interface is really new, so we're using this as a platform to kind of try new ideas and see what works best from the user perspective.
And the nice thing about this ring is it's not oriented to any specific side. So
That's right.
Like I can just spin the ring around and use it from over here. It's awesome.
Yeah, one of the keys to Surface applications is making them a multi-user, multi-orientation type of design, so that you're not fixed on this side of the device or that side of the device. Yeah, so we've really tried to make the controls in the user interface available to all sides of the device. And so you've got that your ring menu concept, but then the actual map itself is a scatter view item that can be resized and reoriented based on where the user is. And one of the great things too is it also gives us this ability to enlarge the map. So this is different than zooming, in that you get to a zoom level you're looking for, and then you can just enlarge the entire map with this, or get it out of the way if you're doing some other stuff out here.
Yeah.
It's really useful for that. So, one of the things we did, for the Army show, was we tried to show how this could be used for, say, like mission planning. And so we'll go ahead and, move over to Afghanistan. And then what I'm showing here is these are GRSS feeds. We're pulling in data from an RSS feed that has, coordinates applied to it. So we're zooming in. We're, showing some incidents here. This is something else we've built into the control. This is kind of our push pin framework, in which these push pins have this kind of automated grouping, where as you're at certain altitudes, it's going to group or expand. And so we built kind of these base level push pin controls that could be used for GRSS or KML data or other things.
So it collapses a bunch of push pins into kind of like a folder. It tells you how many things are in there.
Exactly. It tells you how many are in there and then groups them. So this is this comes in really handy when you've got a large amount of points and you want to group them together. But you click on that and it goes in and zooms in, and then gives you the expanded view of that. So, we can, these are all properties built into this. We can say, hey, we want it to expand to 20,000 feet, or we want it to
Sure.
contract at this level. So those are all configurable, and, we can do other things like, the look and feel of it. So this one was based on our base pushpin control, but I added this button to, basically have imagery pop out. So, that's one right there. And then when we drag these back in, it expands the map back out. Then I'll pull up some, other imagery there. So these are scatter view items, so they can, this leverages the Surface SDK. I, just basically have these, images on top of these items that can be scaled and rotated. So an interesting thing that we've done is we've taken this physical ring, we've put one of the Surface image tags in the back, so Surface recognizes it, and then we can, put the ring on top of the image, and it acts as a magnifying glass.
So this is like a photographer using a loop on a photograph almost.
Sure.
So
yeah.
you can zoom in, you can look at specific parts of the image without having to drill into the whole image on the entire surface.
Absolutely. I mean, this gives you, some capabilities that you wouldn't have in a, let's say a typical user interface, or in, a zoom control. So, but by twisting the ring, and Surface knows the orientation of this ring because it's orient aware. If you put a tag on their finger, it knows the orientation of that object based on the device. So we leverage that to provide this, zoom in and zoom out capability. What's great too is because the image underneath is a scatter view item, I can continue to, enlarge that, pan around on it, and I keep that magnification level that I have. The other thing that this enables us to do is we could have, multiple users doing this at the same time. So if I've got this over in this corner, you could have this image over on your side, take one of the rings, put it down, and we could both be doing analysis at the same time.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is incredible. It's like real life, only amplified.
Right, yeah, exactly. And really what we were originally doing this for is to, just get people to start thinking out of the box. This is, this is not a typical user interface thing.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do this on anything else but Surface. I mean, the vision system in Surface enables us to have these physical objects that interact, with, the virtual world. And so we use this as, as an idea factory. Hey, check this out. Look what we did with this. Can you think of some other ideas? Using physical objects and leveraging the vision system. So we can even have two rings on that same image.
That's great.
So that really, that multi-user aspect really, comes into effect on this solution. And the fact that we can, get the map out of the way while we're working with the imagery, and then, pull it back in. So another kind of thing that the SDK makes this really easy for us to do, but it's a great capability to add to a solution like this, is this inking idea. So, I've got this ink control where I can pick a color, click on the ink, and then be able to, basically ink directly on the map. So for the mission planning folks, and this is a an incredible capability just to be able to whiteboard right on top of the map.
Yeah.
This is the ink control is something that's built into the Surface SDK, and so we just leverage that. We place it over top of the map, and then absolutely, you can
multi-touch.
Absolutely, yeah. And if I want to, say like I'm working on this side and I want to bring that, control over here, I can do it. And so that's where this rotating map really, really helps out on that.
It's great.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to switch over now to another solution that we built using the same map control, but in a different context. So this is actually the concept of this is based around a constituent management system. So if you're a city government or a county government, you're managing your constituents, and you might have an online system where they're posting their issues or their complaints and that type of thing. And when it comes down to it, it's relationship management. And so we're using Microsoft Dynamics CRM for this, and leveraging the capability it has to manage that relationship management process in more of a citizen-oriented perspective.
So this is not the place where you go and do data entry.
No,
this is
absolutely not.
a visualization tool.
Correct.
It's a way to interact with the data in a natural way.
Exactly, and so the idea would be, the scenario is, I work in county government office. My boss calls me and says, we've got a meeting at 10 o'clock. We want to discuss constituent issues. Can you be prepared for that? And so around that idea, we took Microsoft Dynamics CRM, added a capability to do a printout of the individual records. And this is one of those printouts here. It has a image tag on it that Surface recognizes, and this value, this image tag is associated with the value of this record in the CRM system. So I can, maybe grab 3 of these cases and have, these ready to go. I walk down to the briefing room where the Surface device is, and instead of, the typical scenario is I've got a PowerPoint presentation, I've got my laptop, I hook it up to a projector, we turn off the lights, everybody sits in the room and they stare at the screen. And,
Yeah.
There's really no collaboration and nothing dynamic about it at all.
Yeah.
And so we've taken that scenario, leveraging, the capabilities of the vision system in Surface and, reading these tags. You can walk in to that briefing room, place that printout onto the Surface device, brings up the CRM record. So we've got kind of a subset of the information, really the most important points about the record that show up over in this, other window over here. And then we center the map on that particular, the citizen's address. And then, one of the data fields was crime. And so we know that, that's their issue. That's what they're mainly concerned with. So using that, we're able to, go out there and get a GRSS feed of crime data, crimes that occur in their neighborhood, and then click on that. That expands out and gives me this, these specific crime incidents. I can click on there, get the details of it, and then based on this, I can, come to the conclusion as to, does this citizen have a legitimate issue or not? Do we need to have a resolution on it? So one of the other things from a user interface perspective we did on this was, we knew this was going to be a, when you do this type of briefing, it's a team effort. You've got, several folks involved in it. Mm-hmm. And so we added these orient buttons to reorient the entire application, including, the CRM data to the specific side of the Surface that the person, that's maybe doing the data, adding in the notes or, doing some, visualization of the map, we would just want to orient it towards them and make it easy to do that. Mm-hmm. So we've got that in there. Again, we have the ring menu. And so, this provides us, with a space to put these additional controls in there, like adding, new data fields. Like in this case, I brought up gas prices from a GRSS feed. And again, this can be turned to reorient towards the specific user that's, focused on it at the moment. Again, like you said before, this is not a data entry system. This is analysis. But, you may want to take some notes on this. I mean, based on this meeting, there's going to be some conclusion that comes from it. So in that case, we, again, leveraging the SDK, from Surface, where it provides, a text box control that when I click on that, it opens up a virtual keyboard. Mm-hmm. And then I'm able to, enter something in there and do some limited data entry and then save it back to the CRM system. That's what this one's really all about. And again, like you said, I mean, this could be used for so many other scenarios.
Yeah,
so many
it's
other
a great way
sources.
to naturally look at this data that would normally be in some kind of database.
Absolutely, yep. So now we're going to have a little fun. This is an application that we built to kind of investigate ideas around, manipulating 3D models in Surface. And so this model was actually, somebody had developed it through using Autodesk Maya. Mm-hmm. We converted it over to XAML, posted it on the web and said, hey, I built this model, I converted it to XAML. All you WPF guys out there, try to figure out something to do with it, build an app with it. So, interestingly enough, the developer that did this, he was on paternity leave at the time. His wife, had a baby, and he called me up and said, "I really want to write some code. You got something for me to do?" And I said, "I do. I have this idea around this, cube that somebody had modeled, and I want to put it on Surface." And loaded up the software development kit on a PC for him, which has the software development kit includes a simulator for Surface. Mm-hmm. Knew he wasn't going to have a Surface in his house. Yeah. So I, brought the device over to his house and. About 5 days later, I get an email in my inbox and it says, here you go. And he had developed this solution, entirely in the simulator. A guy by the name of Josh Blake, really brilliant WPF and Surface developer. And this is what came out of it. So, so we took that model. The conversion of XAML allowed us to really easily put it into this WPF app. So Surface can either be XNA or WPF. Mm-hmm. The XAML can be developed in expression blend, and we can add all this this great visuals to it, great animations, and then bring it into our Visual Studio environment and complete the Surface development and add these manipulations. So that's what we did here. And it really gives you this almost realistic experience of actually manipulating a physical object. And compared to a PC-based app that would do the same
and
thing.
I've seen things just like this on a PC, and it's not the
cumbersome.
same experience.
Yeah, you
It's
have
hard to flip to the other side of the cube, and
Yeah.
if you just want to get a view, what's the other side look like, what colors are there. But this is a much easier way to navigate it.
And from this, I mean, we've had people see this and say, hey, we have 3D models of things that we do, like ships. And say, they could see this as a great way to do, manipulations of those models and really do analysis and those type of things.
Yeah.
Great tool for manipulating 3D objects. And I think this was our first step towards that, and I definitely see us kind of moving forward and doing some more interesting things with this.
That's great.
Data visualizations, modeling, those type of things.
Well, thanks so much for spending some time showing us.
Absolutely.
Can't wait to
Thank
see.
you.
And what is your website?
www.infostrat.com.
Great. Thank you.